The day I signed the divorce papers, the conference room at the law office felt colder than the winter morning outside. The documents were crisp, official, and unforgiving. Across the table, my ex-wife, Vanessa, wore a satisfied smile as if the world had finally aligned in her favor. She walked away with the rented house, the Honda she had always wanted, and half of our combined savings. I left with an old Toyota that had seen better days and around $800 in my personal account. The reality hit me in waves, not as pain, but as a strange, icy calm. The life I had known, the marriage I had invested 10 years into, had vanished in a single signature. Vanessa didn't even spare a glance as I collected my belongings. Her words echoed in my mind. "You'll die poor and alone." She believed she had won, that she had complete control over my fate. But while she celebrated, I found a quiet determination settling in my chest. Humiliation could not destroy the life I still had the power to build. With nothing left but my pride and a few measly possessions, I started working on the warehouse floor. $10 an hour, moving boxes and stacking pallets in the heat of summer and the chill of winter, became my new reality. I rented a small, dim room from a kind elderly woman named Carol for $75 a week. It was nothing like the home I had built with Vanessa, but it was mine, small and sufficient. Each night, I collapsed onto the narrow bed, exhausted, letting sleep erase the humiliation of the day. Days passed in monotonous rhythm. The warehouse was unforgiving in its indifference. My supervisor, Steve, barely noticed me. As long as the work was done, no one cared who I was or what I had lost. The world outside seemed to move forward without me, and in that stillness, I began to observe, to think, to plan. The quiet became my ally. I avoided speaking about the divorce. It was a wound I didn't want to spread to those around me. I learned to endure, to blend into the background, while assessing my next steps. 3 months after the divorce, a figure from my past appeared unexpectedly. Marcus, my former business partner, spotted me during a lunch break at the warehouse. He looked the same as I remembered, professional, confident, with an easy smile that seemed sincere rather than calculated. "After your shift," he said, "let's talk." There was a gravity in his voice, one that suggested this wasn't a casual reunion. I nodded, curiosity piqued, but didn't allow hope to take hold. Later, in a small diner off the main road, Marcus revealed the reason for his search. He had hired a private investigator to locate me after years of failed attempts. He slid a set of legal documents across the table, confirming what I had never expected. I owned 40% of our former company, shares that had been protected in a trust he had set up long before my marriage. The revelation stunned me. My mind whirled between disbelief and a cautious optimism I hadn't felt in months. Marcus explained that the company, Portman Technologies, had been acquired by a larger firm for a staggering $11.07 million. Marcus himself received $4.7 million, but my share, my rightful share, was intact, shielded from Vanessa and her manipulations. The news was overwhelming. For years I had toiled under the assumption that my life was over, scraping by while Vanessa lived in comfort. Now suddenly a door had opened. Marcus detailed how he had tried to contact me 5 years earlier but had held back, respecting my stability and the fragile balance I maintained. That respect, it seemed, had cost me years of potential freedom. Yet now the opportunity was real, tangible, and waiting for me to act. After the initial shock faded, I realized I needed guidance. Marcus had laid out the basics, But I had never navigated wealth, trusts, or corporate acquisitions before. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with Jennifer Parks, a sharp and meticulous attorney who specialized in corporate law and trust management. Her office was minimalist but commanding. Books neatly aligned, certificates framed on the wall, and a desk that seemed to silently demand respect. Jennifer reviewed the documents Marcus had brought with her usual precision. She explained every clause of the trust fund, showing how my shares were legally protected from any marital claims. "This trust was created well before your marriage," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Your ex-wife waived all rights to these assets. Legally, she cannot touch a single cent." Hearing those words, a strange mix of relief and vindication swept through me. All the nights of struggling in that small room, every humiliation at the warehouse, had been a prelude to this moment. I finally understood that control wasn't entirely with Vanessa. She had assumed she could dominate the narrative, but the truth was out of her reach. She couldn't touch what was lawfully mine. Marcus chimed in with a memory of his father, a man who had lost everything during a corporate downsizing and lived the rest of his life in regret. "I couldn't let that happen to you," he said. "Your contributions to the company earned you this. I ensured your stake was untouchable, no matter the circumstances." The sincerity in his voice grounded me. Here was someone who had seen the bigger picture, someone who valued integrity over convenience. Before taking any immediate action, I chose to take a step back. I opened a new bank account to separate a portion of my windfall for savings, another for investments, and a small fraction for personal expenses. The rest, I decided, could wait. I continued working at the warehouse, not out of necessity, but as a grounding ritual. The physical labor kept me connected to reality, reminded me of where I had been, and fueled my desire for stability over reckless indulgence. Soon, I began working closely with a financial advisor to maximize the potential of my newfound assets. We discussed investments, property acquisitions, and retirement planning. Slowly, I started purchasing a modest home and a sturdy truck, symbols of security rather than status. Automating payments and planning for the future became a form of therapy, a way to reclaim control over the fragments of life Vanessa had tried to strip from me. But even as I rebuilt my life materially, there was an emptiness I couldn't fill with money or possessions. 6 weeks into this new chapter, I realized I lacked purpose. My days were structured but soulless, my achievements numerical but detached. I remembered Marcus's words about helping others, the lessons of loyalty and community he had imparted. It struck me that creating a meaningful impact could restore a sense of fulfillment. That night, I drafted a plan, an educational fund for underprivileged students passionate about technology. The foundation, named the Sullivan-Patterson Educational Fund in honor of Marcus and myself, became a mission. I handpicked 5 students for the inaugural scholarships, meticulously reviewing applications and essays. One of them, Daniel, could barely contain his tears when he learned he had been selected. "This is my chance," he whispered during our call. "I can finally go to college." Hearing that, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: genuine purpose. Meanwhile, life continued to move forward. I began offering consultancy work to Marcus's company, a remote position that allowed me flexibility and engagement without overwhelming pressure. My days became a rhythm of work, personal development, and involvement with the Scholarship Foundation. Each evening, as I returned to my small but comfortable home, I felt the subtle satisfaction of progress, the steady pulse of a life being rebuilt. It was during a mundane trip to a hardware store that I encountered Sarah, Vanessa's younger sister. She approached cautiously, polite, but curious. "I heard about everything. I just wanted to check how you're doing," she said, her voice gentle, almost tentative. I smiled politely, but declined her offer to meet for coffee, understanding that some bridges were better left untraveled. My focus was on moving forward, not revisiting past entanglements. In parallel, Daniel continued to send updates, photos of his dorm room, stories of his first college experiences, and reflections on how the scholarship had transformed his life. Each message was a reminder that my actions now extended beyond myself. The foundation was more than a project. It was a lifeline for young minds who might otherwise never have had a chance. Life's complexity also manifested in subtle ways through the media. A local tech blog published a detailed article about Marcus's recent acquisitions, inadvertently bringing my story into public view. Unknown contacts began reaching out, some curious, some opportunistic. I maintained careful boundaries, blocking unnecessary communication and focusing on what mattered: my work, the foundation, and planning for the future. Eventually, Vanessa tried to reconnect. Calls from various numbers, text messages, and even an unexpected Sunday visit to my home attempted to pierce the calm I had established. Each time I firmly but politely refused. The past, I realized, could not dictate the present. I maintained boundaries, asserting control over the narrative of my own life. Discussions about the trust fund and the legal protections surrounding my assets made it clear. She no longer had access, no leverage, no influence. Through it all, the scholarship foundation thrived. Each student's progress became a personal victory, and I started seeing the broader impact of my resilience and foresight. Marcus introduced me to new professional opportunities, expanding my role and influence in the tech world. Slowly, the man who had been humiliated, abandoned, and financially stripped was transforming into someone capable of shaping his destiny, not just surviving, but leading. By the time I reflected on the first months of rebuilding, I realized something profound. Life could be taken away in an instant, but the ability to rebuild, to redefine purpose, and reclaim agency was a power that no one could confiscate. Vanessa had thought she controlled everything, but her illusion of dominance crumbled quietly as I established a new, meaningful existence, one rooted in independence, resilience, and the empowerment of others. Weeks turned into months, and my life gradually transformed from the haze of survival into a structured, purposeful existence. Every morning I woke up not to fear or resentment, but to a routine I controlled. The Scholarship Foundation demanded attention, providing me with a sense of responsibility far beyond what I had experienced before. I spent hours reviewing applicants' essays, speaking with students about their goals, and coordinating mentorship opportunities. The foundation was no longer a small gesture of goodwill. It had become a central pillar of my identity, a manifestation of resilience and forward thinking. Daniel, the first scholarship recipient, thrived. His messages, filled with excitement and gratitude, were a daily reminder that my past struggles had not been in vain. Watching him and the other students grow gave me a purpose that Vanessa's betrayal could never have destroyed. I began documenting their journeys, creating reports and updates for potential donors, framing the foundation not merely as charity, but as a vehicle for meaningful change in the tech community. Meanwhile, my personal and professional life expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. Marcus introduced me to remote consulting projects for startups, some struggling, others on the brink of rapid growth. Each engagement required strategic thinking, problem-solving, and diplomacy, skills I had honed during my years in the warehouse and through navigating the complexities of my divorce. These projects were intellectually stimulating, and the financial compensation allowed me to secure a permanent home, invest in equipment, and even set aside savings for future security. Despite these victories, Vanessa remained an undercurrent in my life. She attempted contact multiple times, each attempt more desperate than the last. Calls, emails, even direct visits were met with polite but firm refusals. It became clear that she expected I would be desperate for reconciliation or financial negotiation. But I had no intention of revisiting the past. The trust fund, established years before our marriage, ensured she had no legal leverage over me, and her attempts at manipulation held no sway over my mind or emotions. Then there was Sarah, Vanessa's younger sister. Our paths crossed multiple times, often in mundane settings, a hardware store, a cafe, a bookstore. Unlike Vanessa, Sarah approached with a sense of genuine curiosity and empathy. She did not push or demand attention. She asked thoughtful questions about the foundation, my work, and my well-being. At first, I declined her offers to meet, cautious about entanglement with anyone connected to Vanessa. But her consistent kindness and discretion planted a seed of cautious trust in me. At the same time, the foundation faced its first major challenge. One of the scholarship students, a brilliant but impulsive young woman named Mia, struggled with meeting deadlines and balancing work and study. Her scholarship was at risk, and she reached out in panic. I spent hours mentoring her, creating a structured plan, assigning small, achievable goals, and connecting her with peer support. Watching her regain confidence and eventually excel in her projects reinforced the impact of deliberate, patient guidance. The foundation was no longer just an act of charity. It was a means of shaping futures, a way to turn chaos into opportunity. In parallel, my consulting work with startups brought me closer to real influence in the tech world. I attended virtual board meetings, guided teams through strategic pivots, and occasionally traveled to oversee key product launches. These experiences allowed me to reclaim a sense of authority and purpose, something Vanessa had dismissed with her cruel words years before. I felt competent, respected, and most importantly, in control of my destiny. Unexpectedly, Vanessa's interference escalated when she discovered my association with Sarah. She began subtly warning her sister away, attempting to influence her perception of me. Sarah, however, did not waver. Her loyalty was not to Vanessa's bitterness, but to her own judgment, and she began cautiously sharing details of my accomplishments with Vanessa. Vanessa, obsessed with control, interpreted this as a threat to her dominance, never realizing that her attempts to manipulate only highlighted her irrelevance in my reconstructed life. One evening, after a long day of consulting and reviewing scholarship applications, I received an email from Marcus. He had secured a new project, a tech initiative aiming to provide affordable educational software to underprivileged communities. He wanted me to lead the strategic planning remotely. The offer was tempting, a significant financial and professional leap, but it also meant even more responsibility. I hesitated only briefly before accepting. This was not about revenge or proving anything to Vanessa. It was about creating a life aligned with my values, a life of impact stability, and integrity. As the months progressed, the foundation expanded beyond the initial 5 students. Applications poured in from across the state, each story a testament to resilience and ambition. I found myself mentoring multiple young people simultaneously, establishing a small team to manage communications, fund disbursement, and progress tracking. Every day brought a tangible sense of achievement, a reinforcement of the idea that purpose and diligence could reconstruct a shattered life. Meanwhile, I maintained a careful distance from Vanessa and her manipulations. Her calls, emails, and occasional unannounced visits were met with polite refusals or no response at all. She seemed unable to comprehend that her control had evaporated, that the man she had once underestimated had now created stability, influence, and respect without her involvement. It was a quiet but powerful reversal of power. She assumed dominance, but in reality, she had been sidelined by my strategic patience, foresight, and determination. Sarah remained a subtle ally, often checking in with updates about Vanessa without overstepping boundaries. Our conversations remained professional and neutral, but I gradually recognized a sense of genuine care in her tone. She was neither meddlesome nor intrusive, just observant and supportive. Her presence reinforced that my life could include trustworthy allies even within circles Vanessa sought to control. By the end of the year, I had fully transitioned from the man humiliated in a warehouse to a respected figure in the tech and philanthropic community. My home was secure, my work meaningful, and my foundation had created tangible opportunities for dozens of students. The irony was palpable. Vanessa had thought she controlled everything, but her sister, acting independently and ethically, had indirectly contributed to my stability and success. In these months, I learned that true power wasn't derived from manipulation or wealth alone. It emerged from patience, strategic thinking, and leveraging the opportunities that others failed to recognize. Vanessa's attempts to dominate were irrelevant. The narrative I had reconstructed was built on resilience, foresight, and a network of real allies who believed in action over assertion. By now, my routine had evolved into a harmonious balance of mentorship, professional responsibility, and personal growth. Each evening I reflected on the journey, from the humiliation, the small rented room, the menial labor, to the current state of achievement and purpose. The past was no longer a weight. It was a foundation upon which I built a meaningful life. Spring arrived, and with it came an unexpected tension. Vanessa had learned about the foundation's growth and my success with Marcus's projects. Despite her attempts to assert influence, her control had slipped through her fingers. Her calls and emails escalated in frequency and veiled threats. Yet I remained unshaken. Each message, each demand for attention or explanation, was meticulously documented. I knew that preserving evidence was not about revenge. It was about securing the integrity of the life I had rebuilt. One afternoon, as I was reviewing scholarship applications in my home office, a notification popped up. Sarah had sent a brief message asking to meet at a quiet cafe. I hesitated, considering the implications. Vanessa's shadow was always looming, yet Sarah had proven herself thoughtful and discreet. Her intentions seemed genuine, and I sensed that this meeting could provide clarity or even an unexpected opportunity. At the cafe, Sarah arrived first, her posture careful but relaxed. I joined her a few minutes later, and we exchanged polite greetings, keeping the conversation neutral at first. Gradually, she shared insights about Vanessa's attempts to meddle, how she tried to influence mutual acquaintances, subtly disparage my reputation, and even hint at legal claims. Sarah's observations were precise and measured. She had clearly been watching without judgment, simply noting facts. "You're doing more than just surviving," she said finally, her eyes meeting mine with a hint of admiration. "You're building something meaningful. Vanessa, she just doesn't get it." Her words resonated deeply. It wasn't validation I needed, but recognition from someone outside the chaos of the divorce brought a sense of balance. I explained briefly the growth of the foundation, the students' successes, and my work with Marcus. Sarah listened carefully, nodding and occasionally asking thoughtful questions that showed genuine interest. This meeting marked a subtle turning point. For the first time, I felt the threads of my old life and new life intertwining, not through Vanessa, but through Sarah's discreet support and perspective. It reinforced the realization that influence and trust could come from unexpected places, often in ways the past adversary could never anticipate. Meanwhile, Vanessa attempted more aggressive tactics. She began sending documents questioning the legality of my foundation's operations, insinuating improper use of funds. I forwarded everything to Jennifer Parks, the attorney who had facilitated the original trust and business agreements. Jennifer's response was clear. Vanessa had no legal footing, and her claims were baseless. She recommended compiling a comprehensive record of all correspondence, which I did diligently. Amidst this legal shadow, my life maintained rhythm and purpose. The foundation expanded to include scholarships in coding, engineering, and digital design. Each student's progress was meticulously tracked, with mentors providing updates and guidance. The stories of these students, children from single-parent households, families struggling financially, and young adults determined to break cycles of disadvantage, added tangible meaning to each day. Unexpectedly, Vanessa escalated further, visiting my neighborhood under the pretext of casual errands. Her presence was a stark reminder that control was an illusion for those who clung to it. I refused to meet her, maintaining boundaries and documenting every encounter from a safe distance. Sarah informed me discreetly about Vanessa's visits, subtly reinforcing that I was not alone in observing the situation. One evening, as I finalized scholarship selections for the upcoming academic year, I received a message from Marcus. He was organizing a strategic retreat for the company's leadership team and wanted me to attend as an advisor. This opportunity was significant, not just financially, but for professional recognition. I accepted, recognizing that stepping into this space would solidify my standing, independent of past entanglements. At the retreat, I observed the power of structured influence and foresight. Leaders sought guidance on risk management, investment strategies, and organizational growth. Each session reminded me of the lessons I had internalized during the months of rebuilding: resilience, documentation, patience, and strategic patience. Vanessa's attempts to control or undermine me were irrelevant here. Her influence did not extend into these spaces I had earned through expertise and ethical action. Meanwhile, Sarah remained a quiet, stabilizing presence. She shared occasional updates about Vanessa's escalating frustrations, confirming what I had suspected. The more Vanessa tried to assert control, the more she revealed her inability to affect outcomes that no longer depended on her whims. It was a slow but undeniable revelation. The balance of power had shifted. At home, evenings were now dedicated to the foundation. Calls with mentors, progress reports from students, and coordination with administrators created a structured rhythm. I began journaling about the experience, noting how resilience, patience, and ethical action had transformed adversity into opportunity. Each journal entry served as a reinforcement of lessons learned. Control cannot be forced, influence is earned, and trust comes from consistent, observable behavior. By the end of the block's timeline, I realized that my life was no longer defined by Vanessa's actions or the dissolution of our marriage. Instead, it was defined by the students I helped, the projects I guided, and the ethical, strategic choices I had made. The foundation was growing, my professional life was thriving, and even Sarah's presence reminded me that support could come from unexpected allies, often undermining the very control Vanessa thought she possessed. Through careful observation, deliberate action, and steadfast focus on meaningful goals, I had shifted the narrative entirely. Vanessa's influence diminished, replaced by tangible outcomes, impact, and recognition. Control was no longer an abstract threat. It was concrete, measured in successes, ethical stewardship, and the lives transformed through my guidance. By the conclusion of this period, I had achieved clarity. The past was a lesson. Vanessa's attempts at control were irrelevant, and the future was mine to shape. Through patience, strategy, and ethical action, I had constructed a life where meaningful influence could not be taken or undermined. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Weeks passed after the retreat, and life settled into a rhythm I had longed for, a balance between professional engagement, personal growth, and the responsibilities of the educational foundation. Yet, Vanessa's presence loomed in subtle, unpredictable ways. She began testing boundaries, sending anonymous emails to students in the scholarship program, trying to sow doubt about the legitimacy of the fund. Her messages were polite but insinuating, raising questions about my motives and the foundation's governance. I did not panic. Instead, I documented each interaction. Creating a meticulous record, I forwarded the emails to Jennifer Parks, who advised on possible legal precautions. "These are weak attempts," she said. "They reveal frustration more than actual influence. Keep documenting. We are building an unassailable position." One afternoon, while reviewing student applications and their progress reports, I received a call from Sarah. She had been observing Vanessa's attempts to interfere and was concerned about potential fallout. "She's pushing, but she's reckless," Sarah said calmly. "You've done everything right. Don't react emotionally. Let her actions expose themselves." Her presence, her quiet guidance, became an unexpected anchor during these weeks. Meanwhile, my professional life with Marcus continued to expand. The company had embarked on a new initiative to develop educational software tailored for underserved communities. I was invited to provide advisory input on strategy, ensuring that investments were ethical and aligned with social impact goals. Each project, each decision reinforced a growing sense of autonomy and influence. Then came the first face-to-face encounter. Vanessa, emboldened by her perceived power, appeared at a public tech seminar, where I was a guest speaker. She approached with a confident smile, attempting to corner me in the lobby. But I remained calm, letting security personnel handle the situation discreetly. Sarah, coincidentally present, observed Vanessa's frustrated gestures, quietly noting that her sister was losing patience. That evening, I reviewed the events with Jennifer. Every public appearance, every email, every action she takes, all of it works in our favor if handled correctly, Jennifer explained. Vanessa is revealing her desperation. She can no longer manipulate behind closed doors. The moment is coming when her influence evaporates entirely. At home, I turned my attention to the foundation. 5 new students had been selected for scholarships, and their stories were inspiring. One, a young woman named Emily, had overcome multiple obstacles to pursue computer science. Another, Javier, had been the first in his family to attend college. Each success was a testament to long-term vision, planning, and the tangible impact of ethical choices. Vanessa escalated her efforts subtly. She tried to sway mutual acquaintances and even former employees of the company, insinuating impropriety on my part. Once, she appeared at a local networking event, loudly questioning the credibility of the scholarship fund. I chose not to engage directly. Instead, I ensured Sarah was present to observe and document, and I instructed Jennifer to prepare formal responses if necessary. One evening, as I reviewed a comprehensive report of the Foundation's finances and student progress, Sarah arrived with new information. She had uncovered communications in which Vanessa tried to falsify claims of mismanagement to Marcus, hoping to revoke my advisory role. The messages were clear evidence of manipulation. Sarah shared them quietly, and together we assessed how best to maintain transparency and safeguard the Foundation. I decided to confront Vanessa indirectly. A formal notice was sent outlining the Foundation's governance structure, audited financial statements, and clear documentation of all student activities. Copies were shared with local educational authorities and stakeholders, ensuring that any attempt at interference would be legally impotent. Vanessa's attempts to create doubt or fear were neutralized by clear, verifiable facts. At work with Marcus, the results of Vanessa's interference became evident. Those who had been subtly influenced by her were reassured through clear communication. Her credibility within professional circles had already begun to wane. Colleagues noticed her increasingly frantic behavior and inconsistent statements. The contrast between her desperation and my steady progress was stark. As the weeks turned into months, the Foundation flourished. New mentorship programs were introduced, connecting students with industry leaders. Scholarship recipients began publishing their achievements, sharing their stories of perseverance and gratitude. Each success served as a subtle, living rebuttal to Vanessa's attempts to regain control. Sarah remained a consistent ally, discreetly monitoring Vanessa while offering insight and practical advice. One day, she handed me a file containing transcripts of phone calls, emails, and public statements made by Vanessa over the past 2 months. The evidence was undeniable. Every attempt to interfere was documented, traceable, and legally actionable if necessary. With this newfound clarity, I realized that control had shifted entirely. Vanessa's efforts were futile. She could no longer dictate outcomes. Every attempt at manipulation had inadvertently strengthened the systems I had put in place. The Foundation, my professional role, and the students' success had become living proof of resilience, strategic patience, and ethical action. By the end of this block, a profound sense of empowerment settled in. I was no longer reacting to the chaos Vanessa sought to impose. Instead, I had created a life structured around transparency, impact, and carefully measured influence. Her attempts at control were visible only as artifacts of her own frustration, while my life thrived on the foundation of deliberate, principled decisions. And quietly I began to recognize that Sarah's presence, the steady, observant, and honest perspective she offered, was not just helpful, but transformative. Her loyalty and insight had been a key factor in neutralizing Vanessa's power. The realization that influence could be exerted ethically through clarity, patience, and evidence would guide the next phase of both the foundation and my life. The weeks following the formal notice to Vanessa were marked by a mixture of vigilance and subtle celebration. Every morning I reviewed updates on the foundation, students' progress, and any communications that might indicate renewed attempts at interference. Yet, Vanessa remained silent for a time, as if assessing the futility of her previous efforts. Her absence was almost comforting, though I knew it was temporary. Then came the first tangible social repercussions. Mutual acquaintances who had once been swayed by Vanessa began quietly distancing themselves from her. Rumors of her erratic behavior at networking events circulated, diminishing her credibility. While I focused on the foundation, these small shifts in social perception signaled a broader, inevitable outcome. Her influence was collapsing. One morning, Marcus called me with unexpected news. Vanessa had attempted to contact him directly, implying that my advisory role in the company was illegitimate and that the trust fund controlling my shares was improperly managed. Marcus, however, responded professionally, citing the legal documentation already in place. He made it clear that Vanessa's interference was both unwelcome and irrelevant to the operation of the business. It was a turning point. I realized that the legal and social structures I had built were now actively shielding me from manipulation. Vanessa's attempts to control outcomes were nullified by transparency, documentation, and the alignment of trusted allies. Even more importantly, the foundation's credibility remained intact, and the students continued to thrive without disruption. Around this time, I met with Jennifer Parks again to review the possibility of further legal action if Vanessa escalated her interference. She advised caution, emphasizing that maintaining a calm, methodical approach would not only protect me, but also expose Vanessa's behavior if she persisted. We drafted a detailed report summarizing her previous attempts to undermine the foundation, the legal safeguards in place, and recommendations for formal warnings if necessary. The next encounter was subtle but impactful. At a regional education forum, Vanessa attempted to speak ill of the foundation in front of a group of potential donors. I was there, alongside Sarah and Marcus, observing the situation. As she spoke, it became clear that her knowledge was outdated and her claims easily refuted by the printed reports we had distributed to attendees. Attendees asked questions directly to us, and our calm, factual responses left no room for misrepresentation. Vanessa's face revealed frustration and disbelief. The control she thought she wielded had evaporated in a matter of minutes. Meanwhile, the Foundation's programs were expanding. The scholarship recipients were completing their first year of college successfully, with some already interning at major tech companies. Their achievements became living proof of the integrity and effectiveness of the programs. Every success story circulated through newsletters, social media updates, and local news features, reinforcing the legitimacy of the Foundation and further undermining Vanessa's credibility. At home, I established routines to maintain focus and resilience. Early mornings were devoted to reviewing student applications and mentoring interns in the Foundation. Midday was for professional engagements with Marcus and company projects. Evenings were for planning personal investments and ensuring the smooth operation of both the foundation and my new life. Each day, the structure reinforced stability, making Vanessa's past manipulations feel increasingly irrelevant. A pivotal moment arrived when Sarah discovered additional attempts by Vanessa to manipulate company employees. Vanessa had sent subtle, misleading messages suggesting financial impropriety on my part. Sarah collected the emails, cross-referenced them with official company statements, and presented a complete dossier to Marcus. The evidence was irrefutable. Vanessa had no legal or social standing to question the trust fund or my role. Marcus took immediate steps to ensure employees understood the facts, effectively neutralizing any lingering doubts. As the weeks turned into months, Vanessa's attempts grew more desperate and more visible. She began posting online trying to cast aspersions on my character and questioning the foundation's legitimacy. But by now, my life had a protective buffer of transparency and trust. Every post she made was countered by documented proof of ethical practices, legal safeguards, and tangible student achievements. The more she tried to create chaos, the more evident her desperation became. In parallel, I expanded the foundation's impact. New scholarship programs were introduced for women and underrepresented minorities in STEM. Mentorship initiatives connected students with industry leaders, and a series of workshops helped students develop both technical and soft skills. Each edition strengthened the foundation's reputation and demonstrated the tangible benefits of ethical leadership. By this stage, Vanessa was effectively isolated. Attempts to manipulate students, employees, or mutual acquaintances were systematically thwarted. Her credibility had eroded entirely. Those who had once followed her lead now questioned her motives and accuracy. Even public perception had shifted. Vanessa was increasingly viewed as someone grasping at control she no longer possessed. It was during a quiet evening reviewing student progress reports that the realization hit me fully. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably. I was no longer reacting to chaos. I had created a structure where transparency, integrity, and evidence-based action dictated outcomes. Vanessa's former control was an illusion, and my deliberate, methodical approach had revealed it for what it was. By the end of this period, I could focus entirely on growth and impact. The foundation thrived, my professional life with Marcus flourished, and personal satisfaction replaced the uncertainty and humiliation of the past. Sarah, always a discreet but critical presence, remained a guiding ally. Together, we ensured that every potential threat was anticipated, documented, and neutralized, not through confrontation, but through preparation, evidence, and calm, strategic action. The stage was set for the next phase of life: total independence, expanded influence, and the quiet but absolute dismantling of any control Vanessa had ever imagined she possessed. It was no longer about revenge or anger. It was about building a life immune to manipulation, grounded in ethics, strategy, and tangible results. The following months marked a turning point in both professional and personal spheres. With the foundation growing steadily and the trust fund secured, I began to feel a sense of control I had not experienced since before the divorce. My life was no longer reactionary. I was proactive, shaping outcomes instead of being shaped by them. One morning, Marcus called to discuss a new initiative. The company had received a government contract to develop educational software for underserved schools, and he wanted my input on implementation. The project represented not only financial growth, but also an opportunity to further solidify the foundation's reputation. I agreed immediately, recognizing the strategic value. Simultaneously, the foundation had expanded its scholarship program. Students who had once been tentative now excelled in university, some landing prestigious internships or scholarships. Each success story became a public testament to the foundation's integrity and impact. Local media began covering student achievements, and the narrative of ethical leadership and mentorship contrasted sharply with the rumors Vanessa tried to propagate. Despite my victories, Vanessa remained an unpredictable variable. She attempted subtle interventions, emails to former friends, whispers about the foundation's funding, and even indirect attempts to contact scholarship recipients. But by now, her efforts were transparent and easily countered. I maintained detailed records, shared updates with Marcus, and involved legal counsel when necessary. Every action she took only reinforced the perception of desperation and loss of credibility. A particularly revealing moment occurred at a professional conference. Vanessa attempted to attend as a guest speaker, aiming to position herself as an authority on educational philanthropy. I was present, as were several foundation donors and partners. As she spoke, it became apparent that her data was outdated and her claims easily refuted. When I presented current statistics and recent student successes, the audience's attention shifted entirely. Vanessa's confidence wavered visibly. Her attempts at control were dismantled not with confrontation, but through fact and transparency. Meanwhile, my personal life continued to stabilize. I had moved into a new home, comfortably furnished and free from reminders of past failures. Financial independence allowed me to invest wisely, save strategically, and maintain the foundation without fear of external manipulation. The structure I built became a buffer against chaos, proving that careful planning and ethical action could overcome betrayal and misfortune. Socially, the consequences for Vanessa were profound. Friends and former allies began distancing themselves as her attempts at manipulation became more obvious. Invitations to events ceased, professional connections questioned her credibility, and her online presence, once curated carefully, now reflected her frustration and desperation. Each failed attempt to assert control further eroded her influence. The foundation, on the other hand, thrived. We implemented mentorship programs, paired students with industry professionals, and organized coding competitions that gained regional attention. These initiatives were documented meticulously, ensuring transparency and public trust. Every success created a narrative that could not be disputed. Ethics, diligence, and perseverance yielded results, while manipulation and deceit led to isolation. Sarah, Vanessa's sister, remained a subtle but important ally. Our interactions were discreet, focused on ensuring the foundation's operations remained unaffected by external pressures. Her insights into Vanessa's mindset helped anticipate moves and respond preemptively. This alliance, though not publicly visible, became an invisible shield, neutralizing potential threats before they could materialize. Financially, the trust fund and acquired shares ensured long-term stability. I began to diversify investments, combining conservative strategies with selective high-risk opportunities. The combination of stability and growth allowed me to expand personal and professional horizons simultaneously. No longer confined by past losses or Vanessa's influence, I was free to explore new ventures, partnerships, and philanthropic opportunities. The most significant aspect, however, was psychological. Each successful intervention, each thwarted attempt at manipulation, and each student achievement reinforced a sense of empowerment. I realized that control had never been about confrontation. It was about preparation, foresight, and strategic action. Vanessa's perception of dominance was an illusion, and dismantling it required patience, evidence, and resilience, qualities I had honed during my months of adversity. By the end of the year, the foundation had doubled its outreach, secured additional funding, and positioned itself as a regional model for ethical leadership and educational support. My professional reputation was solid, my financial security established, and Vanessa's influence virtually non-existent. The balance of power, once skewed, had shifted irrevocably. This period also allowed for reflection. I considered the journey, from the humiliation of divorce, working long hours on the warehouse floor, and living with minimal resources, to regaining autonomy, respect, and success. Each step, each careful decision, contributed to a narrative of resilience and triumph. Vanessa's attempts to control outcomes had inadvertently highlighted the importance of foresight, preparation, and ethical action. In the quiet moments, reviewing the progress of the foundation or the growth of my investments, I understood a fundamental truth. Control was never truly about asserting dominance over others. It was about mastering oneself, preparing for uncertainty, and building systems that safeguarded values and integrity. Vanessa's influence, once overwhelming, had been neutralized not through confrontation, but through evidence, structure, and perseverance. With control restored, the future seemed open and abundant. Opportunities for growth, innovation, and philanthropy abounded. Each day reaffirmed that strategic patience and ethical action could overcome manipulation, betrayal, and loss. The past, while informative, no longer dictated the present. As the year closed, I celebrated milestones with the Foundation's students, partners, and mentors. Their gratitude, success, and growth were tangible proof that the strategies implemented were effective. Vanessa, once a source of distress and unpredictability, had become a minor footnote, her perceived control replaced by my actual, deliberate, and enduring authority. The months following the consolidation of control marked a turning point in my personal and professional trajectory. With the foundation thriving and the trust fund secured, I began to envision a life no longer dictated by Vanessa's past manipulations. My daily routine evolved from mere survival to strategic growth, blending work, philanthropy, and self-improvement. I dedicated mornings to reviewing the Foundation's operations, tracking student progress, evaluating mentorship programs, and ensuring financial transparency. Afternoons were reserved for professional consulting with Marcus, whose insights and partnership remained invaluable. Evenings were mine, a time for reflection, planning, and exploring new ventures. The structure created a buffer against unpredictability, cementing my sense of control. Vanessa, however, continued her attempts at influence, albeit futile. She tried subtle provocations, sending indirect messages, attending public events tied to the Foundation, and leveraging mutual acquaintances to gain attention. Each time, her efforts were neutralized by careful foresight and the silent coordination with Sarah, her sister. With Sarah's discreet guidance, I anticipated Vanessa's moves, countered them preemptively, and ensured that her reach never again affected my life or the Foundation's operations. A particularly defining moment occurred during a regional education summit. Vanessa attempted to insert herself into discussions about scholarship programs, presenting herself as an expert. I was present, representing the foundation. As she spoke, it became clear that her data was outdated, her proposals misaligned with current educational trends, and her credibility waning. I intervened subtly, offering updated insights, sharing student success stories, and presenting verified data. The audience, initially neutral, quickly shifted allegiance, recognizing the foundation's proven impact. Vanessa's demeanor faltered. Her attempts at control crumbled silently before a room full of informed observers. Professionally, I embraced new opportunities. Marcus proposed a technology initiative aimed at providing remote learning platforms for underserved regions. I accepted the project, understanding its potential to amplify both financial growth and social impact. My involvement enhanced the foundation's visibility and reinforced a narrative of ethical leadership, innovation, and resilience, qualities Vanessa could no longer claim. At home, life became peaceful and predictable. I had purchased a new house, blending comfort with minimalism, creating an environment free from reminders of past failures. Financial security allowed me to invest, travel selectively, and focus on long-term goals without distraction. The material stability, however, was secondary to the psychological liberation, the freedom from constant manipulation, fear, and uncertainty. Meanwhile, the foundation's expansion continued. New scholarships, mentorship programs, and partnerships with universities brought real change to students' lives. Each success story was not just a testament to the foundation's efficacy, but also a symbolic contrast to Vanessa's missteps. While she struggled to maintain credibility, the foundation thrived on transparency, diligence, and ethical action. Socially, the consequences for Vanessa were unmistakable. Former allies and acquaintances distanced themselves, recognizing her diminished influence. Invitations to events dwindled, professional contacts questioned her integrity, and her online presence became a reflection of frustration rather than authority. Every attempt to reclaim dominance only highlighted the shift in power. The illusion of control she once wielded had been replaced by my actual, deliberate authority. The sister Sarah continued to play a crucial role in the background. Our discreet collaboration ensured that Vanessa's interference remained contained. With Sarah's insights, we anticipated potential disruptions, enabling proactive responses that preserved both the Foundation's mission and my personal well-being. Though largely invisible, this partnership became an essential shield against lingering threats. A personal milestone arrived when I visited the first cohort of scholarship students now thriving in college. Their gratitude, ambition, and achievements were tangible proof of purpose regained. Seeing the impact of careful planning, mentorship, and ethical stewardship reaffirmed my belief in strategic patience. Each student's success was a reflection not just of guidance, but of the resilience and foresight cultivated after years of adversity. During this period, Vanessa's attempts to reassert herself waned. The repeated failures, public setbacks, and clear evidence of my autonomy made her interventions increasingly irrelevant. By the time she contacted me directly, it was to request a casual meeting. I declined politely, affirming boundaries while leaving no room for manipulation. The message was clear. The chapter had closed, and any residual influence she hoped to assert no longer existed. Financially and professionally, I had reclaimed a position of security and growth. Investments were diversified, the trust fund safeguarded, and my role within Marcus's company expanded. The combination of material stability and ethical authority created a platform for continued expansion, both in business and philanthropy. Every decision reinforced autonomy, every success reinforced credibility, and every student achievement reinforced purpose. Psychologically, the transformation was profound. I no longer reacted to fear, manipulation, or past grievances. Instead, I acted strategically, informed by evidence and guided by foresight. Vanessa's perception of control, once overwhelming, was now a distant memory, a lesson in patience, preparation, and the strength of ethical action. By the end of the year, the foundation had doubled its reach, expanded into new regions, and solidified its reputation. Students continued to excel, and public recognition reinforced a narrative of diligence and integrity. Vanessa's presence, both socially and professionally, became negligible, her influence effectively neutralized by the systems, relationships, and foresight I had cultivated. In reflection, this period illustrated a core truth. Control is never about overpowering others. It is about mastering circumstances, preparing for uncertainty, and building structures that safeguard values. The contrast between deliberate action and reactive manipulation could not have been clearer. Vanessa's efforts to dominate had failed not through confrontation, but through strategic foresight, ethical practice, and consistent diligence. The final weeks of the year brought quiet satisfaction. Milestones were celebrated with students, colleagues, and mentors. The foundation's impact was evident, my professional trajectory solidified, and my personal life aligned with long-term goals. Vanessa, once a source of turmoil, was now an inconsequential part of the past. The illusion of control she believed she possessed had been dismantled, leaving only the enduring truth. Preparation, patience, and ethical action are the ultimate sources of power. As the year closed, I felt a deep sense of closure. The mistakes, betrayals, and challenges had been transformed into lessons and platforms for growth. Every success reinforced independence, every student achievement validated purpose, and every calculated decision strengthened the narrative of resilience. Vanessa's control was gone, replaced by a life defined by clarity, autonomy, and lasting impact. The new year arrived with a sense of clarity and accomplishment. Every challenge from the past, the divorce, the betrayal, the financial uncertainty, had been transformed into lessons, structures, and opportunities. I woke up in my new home in the early morning, sunlight spilling across the minimalist design, and felt a calm that had eluded me for years. No remnants of past manipulation, no lingering doubts, no invisible strings of control. Just freedom, purpose, and focus. The Scholarship Foundation continued to flourish. Reports arrived regularly, highlighting the progress of each student. Improved grades, leadership roles, community engagement. One email stood out from Daniel, my first scholarship recipient, who had just been accepted into a prestigious tech internship program. He wrote with gratitude and excitement, describing how his life trajectory had been reshaped by the opportunity. Reading his words, I felt a profound sense of responsibility, pride, and purpose. This was more than success. It was transformation multiplied through the lives of others. Professionally, my role with Marcus expanded. I oversaw strategic planning, guided new initiatives, and mentored rising talent. The acquisition had yielded financial security, but it was the opportunity to shape real outcomes that mattered most. I negotiated projects with integrity, refusing shortcuts or compromises, and built a reputation for ethical leadership. Colleagues trusted me, clients respected me, and my work became a reflection of deliberate, thoughtful action. Vanessa, once a source of constant anxiety, had faded into irrelevance. Her attempts to reach out, sporadic calls, messages, even visits, were met with calm boundaries. Every interaction reminded me of the lessons learned. Power is not about intimidation or manipulation, but about preparation, foresight, and consistent execution. By maintaining clarity and restraint, I ensured that her influence remained null, and her presence became a distant echo rather than a threat. Sarah, her sister, remained a quiet ally. Her support had been pivotal, not in overt interference, but in guidance, insight, and reassurance. She helped me anticipate challenges, offered wisdom in moments of uncertainty, and reinforced that true loyalty is measured not in words, but in sustained, principled action. I never took her involvement for granted, knowing that her discretion had preserved both my privacy and the integrity of the foundation. Financially, I was secure but measured. Investments were diversified, trust funds protected, and expenditures intentional. I bought a reliable vehicle, furnished my home with comfort yet simplicity, and maintained a lifestyle that aligned with values rather than appearances. Every financial choice was a reaffirmation of control, not just surviving, but thriving in alignment with long-term vision. The social sphere, too, had shifted. Former friends aligned with Vanessa gradually faded from relevance, while new connections, students, colleagues, and mentors, created a network rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. Invitations to professional events, community programs, and philanthropic initiatives provided engagement without compromise. Each interaction reinforced the principle that influence earned through respect and integrity far outweighed any claim of dominance achieved through manipulation or coercion. At one point, I returned to the old neighborhood where Vanessa had once held sway. Passing by familiar streets and landmarks, I felt neither anger nor regret, only a sense of closure. The house we had shared, the spaces once fraught with tension, now existed in memory alone. The chapters of struggle and betrayal were closed, replaced by tangible, ongoing achievements. I realized that control, as Vanessa had imagined it, had always been an illusion. True power lay in action, consistency, and the ability to shape one's life while uplifting others. The Foundation's scholarship recipients became living proof of that truth. Seeing them succeed, share gratitude, and pay forward the opportunities they received, I understood that the victories were collective. Each achievement represented resilience over adversity, the triumph of preparation over chaos, and the enduring impact of ethical stewardship. The life I had rebuilt was no longer solitary. It was amplified through meaningful contributions to others. Even in private moments, I experienced peace. Early mornings with coffee on the porch, evenings spent reviewing Foundation reports, or quiet weekends reading and planning. The rhythm of life was mine to direct. No sudden crises, no emotional manipulation, no imposed expectations, only the deliberate pursuit of goals, relationships, and experiences aligned with long-term fulfillment. By the end of the year, the Foundation expanded further, adding programs for mentorship, online courses, and internships. Students wrote letters expressing how the opportunities had changed their lives, often mentioning that the belief someone had in them made all the difference. Those words resonated deeply, confirming that my actions had meaning beyond personal gain. Vanessa's world, in contrast, remained entangled in the consequences of her choices, a stark reflection of how fleeting control without integrity truly is. In reflection, I understood the final lesson. Life's challenges, betrayal, and loss are not defeats. They are catalysts for growth. Strategic patience, ethical action, and foresight transformed what could have been a life of resentment into one of empowerment and impact. Control was not seized through confrontation or coercion, but earned through preparation, clarity, and consistent, principled decisions. The story concluded not with vengeance but with mastery, of circumstances, of purpose, and of self. I had regained autonomy, rebuilt a life of meaning, and created enduring influence for others. Vanessa's illusions of dominance were irrelevant. The legacy left in my wake, students empowered, businesses thriving, and personal life aligned with values, was the ultimate testimony to deliberate action. The chapter of struggle, manipulation, and uncertainty was closed. A new era had begun, one defined by clarity, resilience, ethical leadership, and the quiet but undeniable power of a life fully reclaimed. Freedom, purpose, and impact were no longer aspirations. They were reality.